21 American household cleaners banned in Europe. The toxic lie in your laundry. The shirt smelled fresh when Maya pulled it from the dryer, then her son's chest tightened. Pattern break. The room was clean, but she heard the faint wheeze. She cracked a window. The lemon linen scent kept blooming like someone sprayed the room. Curiosity gap. If clean air smells like lemons, why is the inhaler on the counter? Hours later in urgent care, she kept asking the same question. How can clean make him wheeze? The nurse just said, it happens. Here's the twist. That clean smell is a chemical cocktail Europe restricts or bans in ways the US doesn't. We're talking hidden fragrance mixes, hormone-hacking fixatives, and contaminants that never show on labels. Stay for the playbook, how brands sell fresh, the loophole, why it's legal, the receipts, the chemicals, and the fixes that actually work. The regulatory loophole origin story. Book 2 regions, 1 bottle, 2 different rule books. The split starts with one idea, how much proof you need before you say no. In the US, the unwritten rule for decades was safe until proven harmful. If regulators didn't have definitive evidence of harm at everyday exposures, products kept selling. In Europe, the anchor was the precautionary principle. If a credible risk exists and safer options are available, limit or restrict first, argue later. Pattern break, same brand, different formula, because rules write recipes. That fork in philosophy shaped the air inside your home. To understand why your laundry aisle looks different than Berlin's, we need to go back to the 1970s. The US built consumer protection by committee, the EPA for environmental releases and certain antimicrobials, the FDA for personal care and some consumer exposures, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission for household product hazards. It meant responsibility was split and chemicals could slip through the seams. Household cleaners sat in this gray zone, sold as mixtures, not drugs, with ingredients shielded by trade secret protection. Pre-market testing was limited. Companies could police themselves and swap labels faster than science could catch up. Meanwhile, Europe centralized classes of concern. The EU detergents regulation set biodegradability benchmarks for surfactants. Reach flipped the burden, requiring data submission and allowing broad restrictions on families like certain phthalates and nonylphenol ethoxylates, APEs, phosphates in laundry and dishwasher detergents. Europe put in hard caps and then bans years ago to protect waterways from eutrophication. The US mostly let states and municipalities push that chain. Curiosity gap. Why does the Eco tab in Paris have different fine print than the Eco tab in Phoenix? Because when Europe tightens, American companies reformulate there while keeping the older recipe here if it's still legal. What nobody knew at the time was how powerful a single word would be: fragrance. That one line on a label can hide dozens, sometimes hundreds of chemicals, including solvents, fixatives, and stabilizers. In the US, trade secret status shields the exact mix. In Europe, allergens in fragrance must be listed once they pass a threshold, so consumers at least see limonene, linalool, or benzyl alcohol flagged on the bottle. The US bottle can just say fragrant. Then there's the euphemism file. Inert ingredients, surfactant blend, stabilizers. They sound harmless. In reality, they're black boxes. When a detergent uses an ethoxylated surfactant like SLES, the manufacturing can generate 1,4-dioxane, a contaminant linked to cancer in animal studies and classified as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. It won't appear on the label because it's not intentionally added. Some states like New York have moved to set limits. Federally, the gap lingers. In Europe, tighter controls on process contaminants and ecolabel criteria push manufacturers to clean up or choose different chemistries. While that was happening in Brussels, something else was happening in American boardrooms. Marketing teams learned to sell scent as proof. Fresh didn't mean no residue. It meant an engineered plume that clings to fabric, reactivates with heat, and telegraphs clean from across the room. You couldn't see the fixatives in that fragrance mix, including phthalates used in the past to hold scent on fibers longer, but you could feel the brand's promise. The legal department added one more layer: use as directed. If you get a rash, you didn't follow the label. Here, where the patchwork becomes a business model. If Europe restricts certain phthalates in household contexts, the multinational shifts to an alternate fixative for the EU run. If US oversight doesn't require the same, the older formula can persist stateside to protect margins. Same brand, different bottle chemistry. Tide site says it follows global safety processes, fine. But compliance with the weakest rule set still passes as compliance, and that's the loophole. Legality becomes the safety story. The oversight split deepens the cracks. The EPA regulates disinfectants as pesticides, but doesn't demand full disclosure of every inert. The CPSC focuses on acute hazards like burns, not slow burn sensitization or everyday inhalation of volatile organic compounds from a spray cleaner. The FDA's role is narrow for household cleaners. No single cop on the beat. Add voluntary industry, fragrance palettes that list hundreds of possible molecules without telling you which ones are in your bottle today, and you're shopping blind. Meanwhile, evidence kept stacking. European regulators flagged nonylphenol ethoxylates for their estrogenic breakdown products and banned them in detergents. Alkylphenol ethoxylates got squeezed out of mainstream European laundry chemistry. On this side, they faded too, but more slowly and without a line in the sand that forced the shift overnight. States nibbled at the edges. Phosphate bans in dish detergent, limits on dioxane in New York. City councils debated fragrance disclosure in cleaning products for public spaces. Progress, but piecemeal. 3 days after Maya's urgent care scare, she started reading labels. Fragrance, that's it, she called the brand. They sent a generic safety sheet. Proprietary. She emailed the European subsidiary. Their ingredient portal listed potential allergens and posted a detailed formulation policy she'd never seen from the US arm. Same logo, different transparency. Europe had made disclosure part of the deal. If you want to sell here, disclose allergens and meet biodegradability requirements. In America, the door stayed half open. Here's the quiet irony. The US often catches up after the damage is clearer, but household exposures don't leave a dramatic fingerprint. Asthma flares, contact dermatitis, headaches, those feel personal, not regulatory. Companies can point to safe use assumptions and dose makes the poison. True, dose matters, but indoor air is a closed system and daily exposures stack. Europe took that accumulation seriously in its rule. The US left it to consumers to solve with windows and wishful thinking. This was the moment everything changed for Maya. She learned the rule, not the rumor. If an ingredient can hide behind fragrance, you can't consent to it. And if a contaminant like 1,4-dioxane isn't an ingredient, you'll never see it. That's the loophole in plain English. We regulate what's listed, not what's lived. Now that we've opened that door, let's see how companies walk through it and why your home learned to equate scent with safety. The corporate playbook for selling clean. Get this, once fragrance became a legal black box, marketing turned it into a badge of honor. Mountain Spring, cool water, Sunrise Meadow. The words did the cleaning before the product ever hit the clothes. Scent was weaponized as proof you'd done a good job. If a room didn't smell like lemons, you hadn't cleaned it. That's conditioning, not hygiene. Here's where it gets crafty. Brands leaned on imagery. Green bottles, dewdrops on leaves, babies sleeping on clouds of microfiber. Meanwhile, the ingredient panel stayed vague. Fragrance covers solvents, fixatives, and dozens of molecules that keep that smell going. Then the confidence boosters. Dermatologist tested, hypoallergenic, gentle. None of those phrases legally require listing the actual fragrance chemicals or fixatives. The promise becomes the product. They also fought disclosure hard. Trade groups argued that listing fragrance components would give away secrets and confuse consumers. So they offered a compromise. Voluntary fragrance palettes on websites. Hundreds of possible molecules, some phased out, some rarely used, all gathered into a list that looks transparent while telling you nothing about what's in your bottle today. Meanwhile, in Europe, allergen labeling thresholds meant those same companies had to name specific fragrance allergens when they crossed limits. So they did there. Here's the quiet split screen. In Brussels-facing factories, formulas shift to comply. Lower limits on certain preservatives, EU-restricted phthalates stripped from fragrance mixes, nonylphenol ethoxylates removed from detergents, phosphates gone. In US-facing runs, if old ingredients are still legal, they can stay. The spreadsheet calls it regional optimization. Consumers call it the same brand. The CFO calls it margin protection. Just follow label directions is the next shield. It turns risk into user error. Spray in a ventilated area. Rinse thoroughly. Don't mix with bleach. If your eyes water, you didn't ventilate. If your child wheezes, maybe you overused the fabric softener. The label becomes a small contract. We warned you, you accepted. Then there are third-party seals. Some are credible and set real bars. Others sell a logo package and an audit that reads like theater. You see a leaf icon and a reassuring phrase, but the fine print allows proprietary fragrance and certain preservatives at levels that still trigger reactions in sensitive users. It's not fraud, it's ambiguity. and ambiguity sells. Internal documents, when they surface, tell a practical story. Teams model risk differently in Europe and the US because the regulatory endpoints are different. A compound flagged under REACH gets replaced or capped in the EU. In the US, the same compound might pass a product safety review if the exposure estimate fits within a margin of safety and there's no federal prohibition. Legal calls it compliance. Product calls it continuity. Marketing calls it now with an even fresher scent. Meanwhile, advertising wired scent to identity. Laundered shirts that announce themselves from 10 feet away. Sofas that smell like ocean. Sprays that neutralize rather than just mask, which sounds like chemistry solved your life. The consumer repeats the behavior because the sensory feedback is immediate. No smell, no reward. That loop drives daily use, which drives exposure. During the pandemic, disinfectants took a victory lap. Kills 99.9% became the headline. Quaternary ammonium compounds moved from hospitals to kitchens. The industry kept the same guidance. Use as directed, don't inhale, mist, ventilate. The more you sprayed, the cleaner you felt, and the brand equity grew. Pattern break. Occupational health data had already flagged certain quats as asthmagens in cleaners and healthcare workers, caution that couldn't compete with ad spend. There's also the rinse myth. Everything washes out. Pattern break. Some surfactants cling, preservatives persist in microfilms, and fragrance capsules are literally designed to rupture over time. Heat reactivates scent on fabrics, so the fresh bloom in your car on the way to school isn't a miracle, it's a release schedule. You wear it, you breathe it. The last card is plausible deniability through complexity. Supply chains are long. Fragrance houses blend for multiple clients. Process contaminants like 1,4-dioxane can vary with manufacturing. A brand can say truthfully that it sets specs below certain thresholds and that it monitors. If a batch spikes, it's a vendor issue. If a state sets a new limit, reformulate in that state. Everyone's acting responsibly inside their lane, and yet the system keeps the consumer in the dark. Meanwhile, US marketing teams test green palettes and free and clear copy. Some free and clear drops dyes and heavy perfume but leaves isothiazolinone preservatives or masking scents under fragrance. The bottle looks safer, clean typography, calm colors, while the exposure story changes less than you expect. It's persuasion theater. You feel heard, you buy again. Here, that's where it gets crazy. The same parent company will publish a glossy sustainability report in Europe detailing a restricted substance list, while the US site focuses on safety process and childproof caps. Both are true. Both are incomplete. The difference lives in what the law requires and what the market accepts as safe. Maya didn't know any of this when she stood in the aisle with a coupon. She knew her son coughed and the shirt smelled like a meadow. The label told her nothing useful. The ad told her everything she was trained to believe. That's the playbook. Change the definition of clean, sell the scent, hide the mix, comply with the weakest rules, and ask you to trust the logo. So let's flip it. If you can't see the recipe, you can at least learn the red flags. Not every chemical is a villain, and not every fragrance triggers harm, but patterns matter. Classes matter. And Europe's restrictions point to the lines many US products still cross. We'll name them, where they show up, why they're restricted there, and how they hide here. The 21 red flags. How we'll use the number. Viral frame, 21 isn't a scare list. It's your field guide to what actually shows up at home. We'll prioritize 8 heavy hitters, the ones that show up across categories or carry the biggest exposure stakes at home. For each, you'll hear 3 things: where you'll find it, why Europe limits or bans it, and how the US label lets it through, sometimes openly, sometimes hidden behind fragrance, surfactant, or inert. Curiosity gap. You'll spot at least 3 of these on products you already own. We'll organize by how you actually use products, not by chemistry textbooks. Laundry first, because your clothes touch skin and air all day. Then the surfactants that make soaps work and the contaminants that ride along. We'll move to sprays you breathe, air and fabric fresheners. Then the bathroom, where disinfectants and bleach meet small rooms and lungs. After that, kitchen and all-purpose cleaners, where solvents and preservatives stack with daily contact. Dishwashing is its own story. Heat, aerosolized enzymes, and rinse aids that leave films on what you eat from. Then fabric softeners and dryer sheets, because heat plus fragrance equals constant micro-releases. We'll close with a rapid-fire pass to complete the 21, so you know what else to watch for on labels and what won't ever appear on label. 2 notes before we dive in. First, fragrance is a container term. If a fragrance house adds phthalates as fixatives or polycyclic musks for persistence, the US bottle can still say fragrance, full stop. In the EU, certain allergens must be listed when present above thresholds, and some musks face restrictions, so the same scent may be built differently. Second, contaminants like 1,4-dioxane aren't ingredients. They're byproducts from manufacturing ethoxylated surfactants like SLES. You won't see them on a label, but state testing and EU process rules push levels down. That's the transparency gap. By the end of this section, you'll know which terms are red lights, which categories carry outsized exposure, and how to swap without losing cleaning power. And yes, we'll call out the common detergent with a banned fragrance mix abroad that still gets sold here under a friendlier name. Start in the laundry room. Your nose already told you why. Laundry detergent. Fragrance mix plus phthalates plus fixatives. To understand why laundry is ground zero, start with the one word that hides the most: fragrance. In the US, that single line can contain a full formula: solvents to dissolve the scent, stabilizers to keep it shelf-stable, and fixatives that make it cling to fabric and bloom for days. Historically, some fragrance houses used phthalates, especially diethyl phthalate, as fixatives to lock scent to fibers. In Europe, several phthalates are broadly restricted due to reproductive and developmental toxicity concerns. In US laundry, you'll rarely see the specific names. You just see fragrance. Here's the daily reality. Detergent doesn't vanish in the rinse. Residue remains in fibers, especially with cold cycles, quick washes, and high-efficiency machines that use less water. Fragrance microcapsules, those tiny beads brands brag about, embed in fabric and rupture with friction and heat. That's why your shirt releases freshness in the car seat at school drop-off during gym class. It's not magic, it's a slow-release system you inhale. There's another layer: allergens inside the fragrance. Common terpene ingredients like limonene and linalool don't sound scary, but once they oxidize in air, they can form potent sensitizers. In Europe, when these allergens exceed thresholds, they appear on the label. In the US, they remain inside fragrance. For people with asthma or fragrance sensitivity, the result can be tight chests, rashes along collar lines, and headaches that track laundry day. Maya learned this the hard way. Her son's t-shirt still smelled like lemon linen hours after the dryer. When she switched to an unscented product, the wheeze eased. That's not proof for every family, but it's the pattern clinicians see: remove the scented residue, reduce the trigger load. Allergists talk about the barrel: fill it with small daily exposures, and even a modest extra splash can tip it into symptoms. Now remember the surfactant backbone driving most mainstream detergents. Many use ethoxylated ingredients for foam and soil lift. During manufacture, that process can generate 1,4-dioxane, a contaminant linked to cancer in animal studies. It's not intentionally added, so it won't be on your label. Some US states have moved to cap levels in household products. Europe pressures manufacturers through tighter process controls and ecolabel criteria. Either way, the consumer can't see it. You only know it's addressed if a brand says so, or if regulators force tests. Baby clothes and bedding amplify the stakes. Infants spend hours with noses inches from fabric, and their skin barrier is still developing. Pediatricians advising families with eczema often recommend true fragrance-free detergents and double rinses because residues, fragrance, dyes, preservatives can aggravate inflamed skin. The science is evolving on long-term effects, but the short-term story shows up in clinics. Less scent, fewer flares for many sensitive kids. Let's talk brands without turning this into a wall of logos. Multinationals often carry two truths at once. Their EU formulas comply with allergen disclosure and tighter phosphorus and surfactant rules. Their US versions lean on trade secrets and broader ingredient freedom. You see it in corporate portals. The European site lists allergens above thresholds and posts a tighter restricted substance list. The American site emphasizes safety processes and dermatologist tested. Both can be accurate. Only one gives you actionable detail. There's also the rinse myth. Labels imply that following directions solves exposure, but high-efficiency machines, cooler water, and quick cycles all leave more residue. Ultra-concentrated liquids reduce packaging, but increase the chance of overdosing by a teaspoon. That's more fragrance capsules, more Quats in softeners, more stabilizers on fabric. If you smell it from arm's length, the chemistry's still with you. So what do European restrictions actually change? For one, certain phthalates face bans or heavy restrictions, pushing fragrance houses to alternate fixatives. Non-nylphenol ethoxylates, once common in detergents, are banned in EU detergents because their breakdown products act like hormones in aquatic systems. Phosphates in household detergents were phased out to protect waterways from algal blooms. The result is a market that nudges toward different chemistries and makes brands prove biodegradability and disclose fragrance allergens past set levels. Human stakes go beyond rashes. Laundry VOCs contribute to indoor air loads. That fresh plume in the morning carpool is inhaled by everyone in a sealed cabin. People with migraines report scent-triggered attacks. Those with asthma find their threshold lower after laundry day. Not everyone is sensitive, but population-level exposure with limited transparency keeps the burden on the consumer to troubleshoot. Maya's final push came when she tried the free and clear version and still saw a red patch along her son's neckline. The culprit was a preservative, not the perfume. Some U.S. free and clear products drop dyes and heavy fragrance but keep isothiazolinons or use masking scents under fragrance. In the EU, limits on certain preservatives in rinse-off products push concentrations down. In the US, they can be higher unless the state says otherwise. She switched to a true fragrance-free, isothiazolinon-free powder, used a measuring scoop, and ran an extra rinse for sheets. The wheeze didn't return. Here's the takeaway you can use tonight. If the label says fragrance, assume a mix you can't see. If it still smells after drying, exposure continues all day. Choose products that list full fragrance components or better carry a credible fragrance-free mark with published criteria. Favor powders with shorter ingredient lists, measure carefully, and rinse well. Pattern break test. Hold a shirt at arm's length. If you smell it, you overdosed. Your laundry shouldn't announce itself from down the hall. If it does, that's chemistry talking, not cleanliness. Surfactants, apes, SLES, and 14-dioxane contamination. You rinse, but the chemistry sticks around. To see why, follow the workhorses of every detergent, surfactants. They're the molecules that pry oil off fabric and keep dirt floating so it doesn't redeposit. Some of the earliest heavy lifters in modern laundry were alkyl phenyl ethoxylates, apes, because they were cheap, effective, and stable. The problem is what they turn into. In water and in the environment, apes break down into alkyl phenols like nonylphenol, compounds with estrogenic activity. Europe drew a firm line. Bans in detergents, restrictions across industries, and wastewater standards that made them uneconomical to keep. In the US, they faded more slowly, nudged by voluntary phase-outs and niche rules rather than a single nationwide prohibition. Maya didn't know apes from apples, but she was living with the downstream effect, residues that keep interacting with bodies long after the spin cycle. From the industry side, the pivot away from apes moved toward other surfactant families, sulfates and sulfonates, sugar-based glucosides, and ethoxylated alcohols. That last group sounds technical, but it's where another quiet passenger appears, 1,4-dioxane. Here's how it happens. To make certain surfactants less harsh and more soluble, manufacturers add ethylene oxide in a process called ethoxylation. Sodium lauryl sulfate, SLES, is the classic example. The conversion makes a nice, foamy, cleaning molecule, but it can leave behind traces of 1,4-dioxane, a solvent-like contaminant formed during that reaction. Nobody intends to make it, and nobody lists it because it's not an ingredient. It's a byproduct, and it rides along unless extra steps strip it out. Animal studies link 1,4-dioxane to cancer. Regulators call it a probable or reasonably anticipated carcinogen. That's not a panic button. It's a process control problem that consumers can't see. What nobody told you on the laundry cap is that concentration and water use change your exposure. Ultra-concentrated detergents cut plastic and shipping weight, which is good, but they also magnify dosing error. A cap filled to the wrong reg means more surfactant on cloth, more residual film, and more chances for leftover impurities. In high-efficiency machines that use less water, that residue clings harder. When the dryer heats it up, you don't just smell the fragrance release. You also volatilize tiny amounts of whatever else is present. Your closet becomes a slow, low-level emitter. While that was happening in households, wastewater plants were waging their own battle. Apes and their breakdown products stress aquatic life. Ethoxylated surfactants can survive parts of treatment and reach rivers. And 1,4-dioxane is notoriously hard to remove. Conventional treatment doesn't catch it well, which means it can slip into effluent and, in some places, drinking water sources. Europe's approach: restrict problematic classes, set stricter discharge targets, incentivize cleaner inputs, lower the load at the front door. The US leaned on plant upgrades and state-specific limits. New York, for instance, set caps on dioxane in household products and forced reformulations. Nationally, you still can't know a brand's dioxane level without public testing or a company disclosure. Meanwhile, marketers celebrated the foam. SLES gives you suds that feel like power, and consumers equate bubbles with clean. But foam is theater, removal is chemistry. You can get solid cleaning from non-ethoxylated systems, but they behave differently and don't show off in the same way. That makes them a tougher sell unless a label earns trust with transparency. Here's where the split with Europe shows up on paper. Under the EU detergents regulation, surfactants must meet biodegradability standards. Phosphorus is capped in household laundry and automatic dish formulations, and ingredient lists must be available online with allergens flagged above thresholds. REACH provides a mechanism to rein in classes like apes. The result isn't a chemical utopia. Plenty of tough debates remain, but it creates pressure to avoid surfactant systems with endocrine-active breakdown products and to control contaminants like dioxane more tightly. Curiosity gap: why don't US labels name fragrance allergens the way EU labels do? In the US, companies can meet internal specs and point to safety margins while still relying on ethoxylated systems that carry invisible baggage. The human side lands in small ways. A home health aide sprays a bathroom cleaner and breathes a mist made from surfactants, solvents, and fragrance. Her lungs don't care which part of the label is inert. A parent opens the dryer and smells the bloom. Their kid rides to school in a sealed car with air recirculating. The doses are low, often very low, but they accumulate across products, rooms, and days. People with asthma or sensitive skin feel it first. Everyone else assumes it's fine, because there's no single dramatic event. So how do you shift the odds without losing cleaning power? You look for surfactant families that don't require ethoxylation, short ingredient lists that favor soap blends, glucosides, or methyl ester sulfonates, and you measure. You seek brands that publicly test and publish dioxane results or carry credible ecolabels that cap process contaminants. You remember that biodegradable surfactants mean something real in Europe and can mean marketing in the US unless criteria are posted. And you watch your nose. If your shirt still smells hours later, you left more on the fabric than you needed. Maya ended up with a detergent that didn't brag about clouds of foam, paired it with hot water maintenance washes for the machine, and stopped chasing the scent. Her basket didn't smell like a meadow anymore. Her son's chest didn't tighten. That's not a cure-all, but it's a cleaner baseline. Less ape legacy, fewer ethoxylated byproducts, and a quieter closet. Air and fabric fresheners, VOCs, and synthetic musks. While Maya cut the scent out of her laundry, the apartment still smelled like ocean breeze by dinner. That came from the plug-in in the hallway and the fabric spray on the couch. Here's the catch: those fresh products don't clean the air, they load it. Most are volatile organic compounds, VOCs that drift, react, and linger. Terpenes like limonene and alpha-pinene smell like citrus and pine. Indoors, they meet ozone from outdoor air or printers, react, and create secondary pollutants, formaldehyde and ultrafine particles. You think you deodorized. You just built a tiny indoor smog factory. Takes first: small rooms, kids on carpets, pets at nose level, older relatives with COPD. Those lungs are closer to the chemistry. Sprays and aerosols turn liquids into inhalable mists. You're breathing droplets, not just smelling a note. Viral clarity: no, not every plug-in causes asthma. Yes, studies link more headaches, wheeze, and fragrance sensitivity in homes that lean on these products. For people like Maya's son, the threshold dropped. A hallway plug-in can tip a quiet chest into a tight one. Action looks ordinary. A roommate spritzes the couch before guests arrive. The terpenes flare pleasant and then start reacting. 15 minutes later, the room's VOC mix is different, smaller, harsher molecules you never bought. Meanwhile, the label's odor-neutralizing claim usually means a blend of fragrance, solvents, and sometimes cycloxystrins or quats to help bind odors. If quats are present, you're misting low-dose disinfectants onto fabrics kids roll on. Nobody intends harm. The design assumes ventilation and low use. Real life packs apartments and closes windows. Now the musks. Polycyclic musks like HHCB, galaxolide, and AHTN tonalide don't smell like musk to everyone because they're often the background note, what makes fresh last. They're persistent, bioaccumulative in aquatic life and turn up in household dust and human samples. Europe has tightened the leash on certain musks and is pushing new assessments under reach. Some are restricted or under review. In the US, they can live behind the word fragrant. Same brand, different continent, different base notes. If you've ever noticed a sweater keeping a clean smell after weeks, you've met persistence up close. What nobody knew in Maya's building was that the hall plugins combined with her old dryer sheets and the fabric spray on the sectional. Add them together and the apartment's baseline VOC level stayed elevated. She started logging headaches that lined up with her neighbor's refill day. When the property manager swapped to unscented hallway diffusers, the smell faded, but the issue, because unscented often means a masking fragrance that counters odor without smelling perfumey. It's still chemistry. Impact shows up in diaries and clinic notes. Asthma educators tell families to create scent-free zones, not because they hate nice odors, but because predictable air helps control symptoms. Migraine specialists warn about triggers. Fragrance is a common one. Veterinarians see contact dermatitis in pets lying on treated blankets. These aren't rare edge cases. They're the everyday frictions that disappear when the scent sources do. Disclosure tells the split-screen story again. In the EU, if a fragrance allergen exceeds a threshold, it gets listed limonene, linalool, citral. For air care, new proposals push further transparency and hazard communication. In the US, the label can keep saying fragrance with an asterisk to a website palette that lists hundreds of possibles without confirming what's in your exact plugin. You're shopping blind for your airway. Here's the complication the industry leans on. People want homes that don't smell like last night's dinner or the litter box. The honest fixes, ventilation, source removal, washing fabrics with low residue cleaners, baking soda in trash cans, are slower and less dramatic. A spray gives you a reward in 3 seconds. That loop is powerful. Maya broke it with small swaps. She pulled the plugins, aired out the hallway with the super's help, washed soft furnishings with a true fragrance-free cleaner, and kept a window cracked during and after cooking. She put a reminder by the door. If you can smell the couch, you don't need more spray. You need less residue and more air. If you're not ready to ditch scent entirely, look for products that fully disclose fragrance components, avoid polycyclic musks, and skip aerosolized formats. Favor short bursts in large ventilated spaces, not plugins that run 24/7 in tight hallways. And remember the simplest test. If a room smells fresh when nobody cleaned it, that freshness came from a bottle, not clean air. Bathroom cleaners, Quats, Bleach, and byproducts. While Maya was fixing the air and laundry, the bathroom kept picking fights. Small room, shiny surfaces, and a bottle that promised 99.9%. That math sounds comforting until you ask how it gets there. The answer is usually quaternary ammonium compounds, Quats plus bleach bottles on the next shelf, and that's where everyday cleaning turns into chemistry class. Steaks first because they're close to the face. Bathrooms are tight boxes. You spray at arm's length, the mist hangs, you bend to scrub, and your nose is inches from the cloud. Kids brush their teeth while the sink still smells, hospital clean. Pets curl up on bath mats hours after a wipe down. If anyone in the house has asthma or reactive airways, that fog can be the difference between a normal night and a rescue inhaler. Even without asthma, repeated exposure can sensitize skin and airways over time. Here, what actually happens when the trigger's pulled. Quats, compounds like benzalkonium chloride or DDAC, ride out in tiny droplets. They're great at killing microbes on non-porous surfaces. They're also irritants. Some occupational health groups list specific quats as asthmagens based on patterns in cleaners and healthcare workers. In a bathroom, where ventilation is often a fan that barely moves air, those droplets stick around. Eyes sting, throats scratch, and if you're unlucky, a cough follows you out of the room. Meanwhile, the other workhorse waits on the shelf. Bleach. Sodium hypochlorite is efficient at disinfection in the right dilution, but it's unforgiving in the wrong pairing. Mix it with an acid toilet bowl cleaner, you can get chlorine gas. Mix it with ammonia-based products, chloramines form. You don't need a lab to make that mistake. You just need 2 bottles and a Sunday cleaning sprint. Emergency rooms see the results every year. Burning eyes, chest tightness, and panicked calls after that smell hits. Labels warn do not mix. But rushed routines and vague product names make it easy to forget. There's a quieter byproduct story, too. Disinfection byproducts, DBPs, can form when bleach meets organic residues on surfaces and in drains. In a steamy, sealed bathroom, you might assume the fan clears everything. Often, it doesn't. Many fans move less air than advertised. and people run them for minutes, not the sustained stretches needed to flush a room. The result is a higher peak concentration of reactive chemicals in a small volume of air, more bang for the nose and lungs. What nobody in Maya's apartment realized was how much theater lived in that cabinet. Foam boosters make scrubbing feel effective. Dyes tint liquids blue to signal toilet strength. Fragrance tries to tame the bite. None of that helps clean. All of it adds exposure. And when those scents meet bleach or quats, you're not just masking, you're layering VOCs over irritants in a space where you breathe faster from the effort of scrubbing. Europe didn't solve bathrooms, but it tightened the edges. Workplace guidance treats quats as substances that deserve exposure control. Some countries nudge facilities toward alternatives where routine disinfection isn't needed. Consumer labels must list certain allergens past thresholds, which means a bottle that smells like fresh pine in Paris might carry a clearer warning than the same scent in Phoenix. The US regulates quats as pesticides for their antimicrobial claims, but inerts aren't fully disclosed on labels, and the focus stays on killing efficacy and acute hazards, not on cumulative indoor air effects in home. Action in real life looks like this. Maya scrubbed the tub with a quat spray, then went to the toilet and reached for a different brand's acid cleaner. The residues hadn't fully rinsed. When the bowl fizzed, her eyes watered. She opened the window, but it was winter. The fan rattled on low. Her son wandered in to ask a question and started coughing within seconds. That was the moment she sat on the tub's edge, put both bottles down, and decided the bathroom needed new rules. Impact shows up when you change the routine. She switched to a plain surfactant cleaner for most surfaces, soap-based or mild non-ethoxylated blends, reserved bleach for periodic deep disinfection, and never in the same session as anything acidic or ammonia-based. She ditched aerosol foams and found a microfiber pad did most of the work without the mist. On days she used bleach, she cracked the window wide, ran the fan for 20 minutes after, and cleared the room of curious kids and the dog until the smell faded. The coughing fit stopped. Her hands, which had been red on Mondays, healed with gloves and fewer harsh sessions. If you manage a home with sensitive lungs, consider skipping routine quats in bathrooms that aren't dealing with illness. Soap and physical removal handle most tasks. If you choose a disinfectant, read the active ingredient, benzalkonium chloride, DDAC, or sodium hypochlorite, and treat it with space and time. Never mix. Rinse surfaces between different products. Ventilate like it matters because it does. And ignore the color and foam. A clear, low-odor cleaner plus elbow grease beats a blue cloud in a small room. The bathroom will still shine. It just won't talk back to your lungs. Kitchen and all-purpose. Glycol ethers, isothiazolinons. While the bathroom demanded respect, the kitchen asked for stamina. Counters, stove tops, greasy pans, the sticky spot under the fruit bowl. Maya hit them with an all-purpose spray that promised cut-through grease and a dish liquid that foamed like a latte. The label looked harmless. The workhorses inside were not always. Start with glycol ethers. They're solvents, great at dissolving oils, inks, and stubborn residues. In kitchens, they show up in degreasers, glass cleaners, and heavy-duty sprays. Some members of this family, especially certain ethylene glycol ethers like 2-butoxyethanol, carry reproductive toxicity and irritation concerns in worker and consumer contexts. Europe splits hairs here in a useful way. Different glycol ethers have different hazard profiles, and the EU classifies and limits specific ones in consumer products. That forces brands to choose safer cousins or lower concentrations. In the US, unless a product crosses into occupational limits or a state restriction, a kitchen spray can still lean on a stronger glycol ether and never list a concentration on the label. You see solvent, maybe a chemical name you don't recognize, and a lemon on the front. Stakes show up on skin and in air. Kitchens are where hands spend time wet, nicked, and moving fast. Dish liquids with certain solvents and strong surfactant systems degrease plates and the lipids on your hands. Cracked knuckles become entry points, and what sits on your skin sits closer to your bloodstream. Spray cleaners add inhalation. You lean over the stove, mist hits hot metal, solvents flash, and you breathe the mix. Sensitive lungs feel it first. Everyone else chalks up the throat catch to strong cleaner. Now the preservatives, specifically isothiazolinons like MIT and CMIT. They're used because water-based products grow microbes. At tiny doses, they keep a bottle safe on a warm shelf. The problem is sensitization. These preservatives are potent at training immune systems to overreact. Once sensitized, some people can't touch a countertop wiped with a preserved spray without breaking out. Europe has capped their levels in rinse-off personal care and tightened uses after waves of contact dermatitis cases. In cleaning products, limits and labeling improve the odds you'll see them named. In the US, they're common in free and clear cleaners and dish liquids because dropping dye and scent doesn't remove the need to preserve water. The label might list methylisothiazolinone in tiny print. The free does the marketing, the preservative does the work. What nobody told Maya was that her sensitive dish liquid still contained MIT. After weeks of winter dishes, the backs of her hands looked like she'd crawled through dry brush. She blamed the weather, then switched to a new scent of the same brand. It got worse. A nurse friend asked about her soap. One swap later to a product that was both fragrance-free and isothiazolinone-free, the cracks started closing. The dishes weren't the problem, the preservative was. Action in a busy kitchen looks like this. A pan gets a blast of degreaser. Glycol ethers lift the film, the cloth does the rest. If the spray also carries a fragrance, you're adding VOCs you don't need to a room where you cook. If it's preserved with MIT, every wipe leaves a trace. You set out grapes, the kid swipes a finger, touches a cheek, and a faint rash blooms by dinner. It's not dramatic, which is why it slips past most households for months. Impact is broader than hands. Add up the daily contacts. Counters 2 to 3 times a day, dishes every night, table at breakfast, the high chair after snacks. Preservatives that sensitize at low exposure become a household risk multiplier. Glycol ethers that are manageable in a garage feel different in a galley kitchen with a gas flame running and windows closed. The difference between Europe and the US is that one side bans cleaning. It's that one side forces hard choices on which solvents and how much preservative and flags more allergens on labels. The other leans on use as directed and lets the market sort it out. Maya rebuilt her kitchen caddy with 3 rules. First, no isothiazolinones. She checked the fine print for methylisothiazolinone, methylchloroisothiazolinone, and skipped anything that hedged with preserve to ensure freshness without naming the agent. Second, minimize glycol ethers with higher hazard profiles. She picked a simple soap-based cleaner for daily wipe-downs and saved a safer, transparently formulated degreaser for the rare baked-on mess, using it with the window open. Third, no mystery fragrance. If a product didn't fully disclose or wasn't fragrance-free by a credible standard, it stayed on the shelf. She also changed the method. Warm water, a drop of mild dish soap, and a microfiber cloth handled most jobs. For glass, a vinegar water solution worked, used away from stone surfaces. For the stove, a paste of baking soda and a damp sponge replaced her weekly solvent blast. Gloves turned out to be the cheapest upgrade. Her hands stopped cracking within 10 days. If you need a fast filter before dinner, scan for methylisothiazolinone, methylchloroisothiazolinone, benzisothiazolinone, and skip them for routine use. If your spray lists a string of glycol ethers, look the exact names up. Some have better safety profiles than others, and avoid aerosol formats that maximize inhalation. Trust your nose less. A fresh lemon in a kitchen doesn't make food safer. A shorter ingredient list and a cloth you can wash does. Dishwashing detergents, enzymes, rinse aids, and fragrance. Maya thought the kitchen was handled until the dishwasher door opened like a sauna. A warm, sweet smell rushed out and a faint mist hovered above the racks. She'd never thought about breathing dishwash cycles. Most people don't. But that cloud isn't just steam. It's whatever the detergent and rinse aid carry into the air when heat and pressure let go. Start with enzymes. They're the quiet heroes in modern dish tabs, proteases, amylases, lipases, meant to slice up food residues at low temperatures. They're efficient and they make eco-cycles possible. The catch is exposure when you unload. If powdery residue coats plates or you pop the door early, tiny enzyme particles can aerosolize. For most households, that's a mild, invisible risk. For sensitized people, think healthcare workers, bakers, or anyone with a history of enzyme exposure. Those aerosols can irritate eyes and airways and over time can contribute to sensitization. Europe treats enzyme declaration more seriously and pushes clear labeling. In the US, the pod's glossy wrapper and complete clean promise do the talking. Then the rinse aid. It's sold as the secret to sparkle. In practice, it's a blend of surfactants and hydrophobics that make water sheet off dishes. It works. It also leaves a film so thin you don't feel it, but you touch it every time you unload and it contacts food when you plate dinner. Most labels tell you to keep the reservoir filled. Few explain what's in it beyond vague chemical names. In Europe, ecolabel criteria limit certain classes and require more disclosure. Here, the default is proprietary. Pattern break. If your glasses are too slippery to squeak, you're feeling residue. Fragrance rides along too. Many dishwasher pods include a lemon or fresh scent that smells pleasant when you crack the door. Heat turns those fragrance molecules into VOCs you inhale at face level. Because fragrance hides specifics in the US, you won't know if that note includes allergens you avoid elsewhere. European rules at least force labeling of certain allergens above thresholds, so the same tab may list limonene in Paris and say nothing in Portland. What nobody told Maya was timing matters. Pop the door right when the cycle ends, you create a plume. Wait 10 minutes, the chamber cools and the mist drops. She started cracking the door later, standing aside when she did and letting the fan run. She also dialed down the rinse aid dispenser to the lowest setting and tested whether she needed it at all. Most days she didn't. There's a brand split screen here too. Some European market tabs lean on full online ingredient lists with enzyme names and allergen flags. US versions highlight power spheres and stain boosters. Both clean, one treats information as part of the product. If you need simple rules, choose tabs without added fragrance or brands that fully disclose fragrance components. Look for enzyme-containing products that name them and avoid powdery residues by not overloading and letting cycles finish. Skip rinse aid or set it low if you must pick a formula with clear ingredient disclosure. And when the chime sounds, don't stand in the fog. Let the heat and whatever rode it out dissipate before you breathe in the clean. Fabric softeners and dryer sheets. Quats, Musks, and heat. Maya thought she'd solved laundry, then the dryer started telling on her. The load finished and a warm, sweet fog rolled out. That smell wasn't detergent anymore, it was the softener and the sheets. Here, the rub. These products don't rinse away. They're designed to stay. Start with the active idea, ester quats. They're quaternary ammonium compounds engineered to coat fibers so they feel slick and reduce static. That thin layer softens, but it also sits where your skin sits. On t-shirts and pillowcases, ester quats live right against pores, and in the dryer they can ride the air you breathe. Research tie-in. Some occupational data associate certain quats with respiratory irritation, and frequent home use raises everyday exposure. If your house has asthma or sensitive skin, that coating can turn into a daily nudge in the wrong direction. Steaks are close in. Babies nap on blankets treated to smell calming. Pets curl on fresh throws. Heat from the dryer doesn't just dry, it drives off volatile bits from whatever's coating those fibers. Open the door, lean in, and you inhale a burst of ester quat fragrance mix at face level. Sensitive airways feel it now. For everyone else, the exposure stacks quietly, especially when laundry runs multiple times a week. Here's what actually makes the smell last. Microcapsules. Many softeners and sheets use fragrance capsules that embed in fibers and rupture with friction. Walking, sitting, hugging, each movement pops a few. That's why a sweater kept in a drawer still blooms fresh when you put it on. The idea sells itself. The trade-off is constant micro-releases right under your nose. Now the base notes. Musks. Polycyclic musks like HHCB and AHTN help scents persist. Europe's been tightening on certain musks. Some face restrictions or heightened scrutiny under REACH because they persist in the environment and turn up in wildlife and dust. In the US, those same persistence champions can hide behind fragrance. Same April name, different bass line depending on the market. What nobody told Maya is that softeners don't just touch laundry, they leave a trail. Dryer exhaust vents outdoors, but garages, balconies, and shared courtyards catch the plume. Walk past an apartment stack and breathe a lane of spring rain. That's VOCs, fragrance plus whatever volatilizes off the quats, moving from your dryer to your neighbor's nose. Indoors, the basket of warm clothes becomes a slow emitter in the hallway. The house smells clean because the air is now scented. Action looks like habit. You toss a capful into the washer, add a sheet to kill static, and feel the softness pay off. Meanwhile, the residue clings, the dryer bakes, and the room fogs. Kids bury faces in warm towels, pets burrow into heat. If someone has contact dermatitis, collars, and waistbands, high friction zones are where red patches show first. If someone has asthma, that first exhale near the dryer door can tighten a chest. Impact shows up when you stop. Maya ran a load without softener or sheets and caught the difference immediately. Less scent, a tiny bit more static, and no throat catch at the dryer. She swapped the sheet for wool dryer balls, added a lower heat setting to slow static, and pulled loads a minute early to avoid overdrying. Static dropped after a week as residual softener washed out. Her son stopped coughing when he helped unload. The Europe split screen appears again in labels. EU products listing allergens above thresholds tell you if the softener carries limonene or linalool. Some formulas avoid certain musks or cap quats differently. US bottles keep fragrance opaque and celebrate long-lasting freshness. Marketing pushes you to equate soft with safe. Regulation shapes how that softness is built. One market nudges toward different fixatives and clearer flags. The other lets the cloud stay mysterious. If you need a quick path off the treadmill, ask what softener solves that Detergent Plus method can't. Static, lower heat, shorter dry times, wool balls, or a stainless clip on the drum to bleed charge. Scratchiness, adjust detergent dose, add a half cup of white vinegar to the rinse on towels only, not on stone-washed items or if your machine's manual warns against it. Scent, that's not cleaning, that's branding. If going cold turkey feels like too much, cut the dose to a quarter cap and skip sheets. Choose fragrance-free, isothiazolinone-free softeners if you must use one, and avoid musks by picking products that disclose fragrance components or carry credible fragrance-free certification. Stand aside when opening the dryer. Let the plume lift before you lean in, and don't store warm, scented laundry in bedroom. Maya kept 2 rules: nothing that makes the dryer talk, nothing that sticks to skin without telling her what it is. Her towels didn't smell like a meadow anymore. They just smelled like towels. And for the first time since this started, the laundry room went quiet. Greenwashing and free and clear. Illusions. Maya walked into the aisle ready to choose better. The bottles anticipated her and dressed for the part. Soft greens, lowercase fonts, watercolor leaves, plant-based, free and clear, naturally derived. It felt like a shortcut by the good one be done. Except the fine print told a different story. Start with plant-based. Many detergents lean on surfactants made from plant oils. Good start. Then run them through ethoxylation with petrochemical ethylene oxide to change performance. You end up with an ethoxylated alcohol, effective, milder on skin, and carrying the same risk for 1,4-dioxane contamination unless manufacturing strips it out. The front says plant. The process still invites a petrochemical byproduct. In Europe, ecolabel criteria push manufacturers to prove low contaminant levels. Here, plant-based can float without that data on the label. Now free and clear. It sounds like a promise, but what's free of what? Many products remove dyes and heavy perfume yet keep isothiazolinone preservatives or add a tiny masking scent hidden in fragrance to neutralize base odors. The smell is faint enough to convince your nose. The immune system of a sensitized person doesn't care. In clinics, dermatologists see patients reacting to free and clear because the label language wasn't a guarantee, it was a brand position. Certification logos raise the stakes. Some seals are rigorous, with public criteria that cap preservatives, prohibit specific musks, exclude phthalates in fragrance, and limit 1,4-dioxane. Others focus on packaging, carbon footprints, or general safety narratives while allowing proprietary fragrance and known sensitizers in small amounts. Pattern break. The leaf icon looks the same at arm's length. The difference is in an appendix you never read. Maya learned to translate. Plant-derived surfactants didn't mean non-ethoxylated. Hypoallergenic didn't mean no isothiazolinones. No harsh chemicals was a feeling, not a spec. She stopped trusting poetry and started hunting for nouns. Methylisothiazolinone, benzisothiazolinone, benzalkonium chloride, limonene, HHCB. If the label said fragrance-free but still listed fragrance, she put it back. Unscented raised another flag. It often means there's a masking fragrance present to cancel odors without adding a scent note. Here's the good news. Some brands really do it. They publish full ingredient lists, disclose fragrance components, or offer true fragrance-free lines verified by credible programs and state 1,4-dioxane testing results or limits. Others meet EU allergen disclosure abroad and mirror that transparency here. The bottles look quieter. The copy is specific. The formula doesn't rely on theater. What nobody tells you is how easy it is to be almost good. Swap to a sugar-based surfactant, keep a touch of MI within guidelines, and the product passes internal safety reviews. Add dermatologist tested, which can mean a small patch test on healthy adults, and the front panel glows. For most people, that's fine. For households like Maya's, almost good keeps problems smoldering. She pressure-tested claims the way a buyer can. If the brand said fragrance-free, she checked whether a fragrance house was credited anywhere and whether any fragrance allergens appeared in the online list. If the brand said no dyes, no perfumes, she scanned for MIT, CMIT, and benzisothiazolinone. If it said plant-based, she looked for surfactants that hinted at ethoxylation and then searched the site for dioxane statements. Silence was its own answer. Europe helped her triangulate. If the EU version of a product listed fragrance allergens online and the US version didn't, she knew the company could disclose when asked. If the EU product carried an ecolabel with criteria that capped preservatives and banned certain musks, she assumed the US twin could meet it if the company chose to harmonize. When it didn't, she took the hint. There's a human cost to ambiguity. Families bounce between brands trying to decode gentle. Teachers post no scented products signs because plugins trigger migraines. Pet owners swap bedding detergents 3 times before a rash fades. The market sells reassurance. The body tracks exposures. Maya ended up with a simple rule set. 1. Short ingredient list she could read without a glossary. 2. True fragrance-free verified by a program that bans masking scents. 3. No isothiazolinons in routine use products. 4. Explicit statements about 4 dioxane testing or certification that covered process contaminants. 5. Methods that made chemistry do less. Measure right, rinse well, ventilate. Her cart got quieter. The laundry stopped performing. The house smelled like nothing at all. And for a family that had been living inside a sales pitch, that silence felt like relief. Rapid fire. The remaining red flags, 21 list completed. Let's fill the cabinet with the rest of the signals you'll want to spot. Fast, clear, and tied to where you'll meet them. Pattern break list, you'll recognize these on your shelves. Optical brighteners in laundry detergents first. They don't remove stains, they lay a fluorescent film so fabrics look whiter under light. EU ecolabels limit them because they persist and can irritate skin, sometimes causing photoreactive rashes on collars and cuffs. In the US, they're just brighteners, and you feel them as that slick, never fully rinsed finish. Ammonium compounds in glass and window cleaners are next. They cut grease and flash off fast, but the fumes can sting eyes and airways, especially in small kitchens with gas stoves. Ventilate, spray onto cloth, not into air. NTA and EDTA chelators show up across cleaners to tame hard water. They work but persist and can mobilize metals downstream. Europe nudges toward biodegradable alternatives and restricts some uses. US labels rarely flag the trade-off. PFAS in stain repellents and some specialty cleaners deserve the spotlight. Europe is moving toward broad phase-outs across categories. The US is patchworking action state by state and via major retailers. If a spray promises repels anything, ask how, and avoid forever chemicals on fabrics you touch. Formaldehyde releasers, like DMDM, hydantoin, or bronopol, keep water-based cleaners shelf-stable by slowly emitting formaldehyde. They're sensitizers and respiratory irritants. Europe caps uses tightly in many consumer products. In US cleaners, they still pop up, especially in bargain multi-purpose liquids. Chlorine dioxide generators in mold and odor sprays sound surgical. The chemistry can create reactive byproducts in tight spaces. If you use them, treat them like bleach. Space, time, and no mixing. Benzalkonium chloride heavy wipes were pandemic staples. They kill, but frequent home use layers a respiratory irritant on kitchen tables and kids' toys. Some European guidance limits routine disinfectant use where soap suffices. At home, wipe less, wash more. Non-ilphenol ethoxylate residues are the ape legacy. Europe banned them in detergents for their hormone-mimicking breakdown products. In older supply chains and industrial products, they linger. At home, avoiding vague, non-ionic surfactants with no detail lowers odds. Synthetic dye additives turn cleaners blue or green to signal strength. They don't clean anything and can sensitize skin. If the color sells you, the chemistry's already doing theater. Terpene-heavy, natural cleaners wrap pine and citrus into a halo. Indoors, terpenes meet ozone and spin off secondary pollutants, formaldehyde, ultrafine particles. They smell honest and still load the room. Open windows or pick low terpene options. N-methyl-2 pyrrolidone, NMP, in tough degreasers and paint-related cleaners carries reproductive toxicity concerns in worker studies. Europe restricts consumer uses for several solvents in this class. In a home, save it for rare jobs, glove up, ventilate, or pick safer substitutes. Butyl salicyl, or 2-butyxyethanol, lives in some glass and all-purpose cleaners. It's a strong solvent that can irritate eyes and airways. Europe limits concentrations more tightly than many US products. If your eyes sting every time you clean the oven door, that's the solvent talking. Ammonia in oven cleaners and heavy-duty sprays can burn skin and lungs in concentrated formats. It's effective, but confined ovens become exposure boxes. Cold surfaces, slow contact time, and real ventilation are non-negotiable, or use non-caustic gel. Sodium hydroxide at high concentration powers drain and oven products. It's brutal on clogs and also on hands, eyes, and airways. One splash becomes an ER visit. If you're not wearing goggles and gloves, you're not using it safely. Chloramines in toilet cleaners pop up when ammonia-based products meet bleach residues. That mix makes a sharp, throat-stinging gas. Rinse between products and space sessions. The label S, "Do Not Mix," isn't legalese, it's a lifeline. Pine oil products ride on nostalgia. As they oxidize, they form potent sensitizers and secondary pollutants indoors. The smell says, "Grandma's house." Your lungs may disagree. Benzene contamination scandals in aerosols weren't folklore. Propellants and valves can bring unwelcome guests. Europe's scrutiny and standards help. US recalls usually come after independent testing catches it. Skip aerosols where a trigger or cloth works. Microplastics in scouring agents and fragrance beads offer texture and scent bursts. They also shed into water and air, lodge in crevices, and drift into wastewater. Europe's moving to restrict microplastics across product types. At home, avoid pearls and scrubbers with plastic grit. Phenoxyethanol as a preservative shows up widely. EU caps concentration in leave-on cosmetics and keeps an eye on infant exposure. In cleaners, it's common at low levels. If you're reacting to a gentle spray, check for it as a suspect. Triclosan's mostly a personal care story, but it still shows up in some legacy household items. The EU banned it in many human hygiene biocides. The US barred it from OTC soaps, but not everywhere. For home cleaning, it's not needed. Soap cleans, disinfectants are for targeted use. Methylchloroisothiazolinone with MI, the classic CMIT-MIT combo, finishes our 21. Europe severely restricted it in rinse-off personal care after a sensitization wave. US cleaning aisles still carry the pair in free and clear sprays. If your skin flares, this do is often the culprit. Now you've got the full field guide. If it foams bright, glows white, repels everything, or promises freshness for weeks, ask how and what lingers after the marketing fades. Who knew? Who paid? Who profited? While Maya was stripping scent out of her home, another story was playing out in boardrooms. Inside the companies that sell fresh, risk teams were flagging the same chemicals we've been walking through. The memos didn't read like a thriller. They were measured, tidy, and clear. Emerging restrictions in Europe, sensitization signals for isothiazolinones, environmental persistence of apes and certain musks, dioxane scrutiny rising in state houses. Meanwhile, the ad campaigns were filming sunlit laundry lines and misty bathrooms. To understand why, we need to follow the money and the rules. Europe's precautionary framework pushed brands to clean up formulas early, ban classes like nonylphenol ethoxylates in detergents, restrict phthalates, cap preservatives in rinse-off uses, and flag fragrance allergens over thresholds. That created a fork. Reformulate globally and absorb the cost, or split the line. One formula for Brussels, another for Boston. Many chose the split. The presentation deck called it market alignment. The finance tab showed the margin saved. What nobody outside the room saw was the corporate playbook. Step 1, disclosure resistance. Keep fragrance as a trade secret box. Offer a palette of possible ingredients online without confirming what's in any given product. Step 2, defensive reassurance. Safe as used for decades, dermatologist tested, OECD biodegradability. All true in fragments, none addressing cumulative exposure at home. Step 3, voluntary pledges that move slower than regulation. Phase out apes over years. Strive to reduce dioxane. Evaluate musks for environmental profile. Step 4, reformulate where law compels. Keep legacy formulas where law allows. The legal shield was simple. Use as directed. If a consumer mixed bleach with an acid cleaner, that wasn't the chemical's fault, it was misuse. If the bathroom fan didn't clear the air, that was a ventilation issue. If a free and clear product flared dermatitis because of MI, the response pointed to population-level safety margins, not the unlucky family. Insurers priced the risk. Settlements were cheaper than recoding a supply chain unless new rules changed the baseline. Meanwhile, trade groups provided cover. They argued that household exposures were low, that ingredients were tested, that alternatives had trade-offs. They weren't entirely wrong. Everything does have trade-offs. But framing the question as individual safety and isolation ignored the stack. Fragrance in laundry, in softeners, in air care, in dishwasher tabs, in bathroom sprays, same house, same day, same people. Europe, in practice, became the control group. Walk a supermarket aisle in Paris and you find the same brands with tighter disclosures, fewer legacy surfactants, and allergen flags. A parent can scan linalool on a fabric softener and decide. In the US, the same bottle might say fresh comfort and fragrance, full stop. Not illegal, just opaque. The difference wasn't science capacity, it was policy. Inside companies, there were teams pushing to harmonize globally. They had pilot runs, cleaner fragrance bases, non-ethoxylated options, and MI-free preservative systems. The roadblock wasn't technical impossibility. It was cost, consumer expectation of that smell, and the fear of losing market share if the product felt different or required tiny behavior changes. Accounting won. R&D kept the playbook ready for when the law or a major retailer forced the switch. Who paid in the meantime? Families like Maya's sank money into doctor visits, special detergents, extra rinses, and trial and error. Cleaners and home health aides paid with lungs and skin. Municipalities paid to chase 1,4-dioxane through groundwater and to upgrade treatment for legacy surfactants. Pet owners paid for vet visits after rashes from treated bedding. Teachers paid in headaches from scented hallways. None of those receipts showed up in quarterly reports. There's another quiet financier: time. Consumers spent hours decoding labels that weren't designed to be decoded. Fragrance-free that was, plant-based that carried petrochemical byproducts as process ghosts. Hypoallergenic that still packed MI. Every return trip to the aisle was a tax on trust. When state regulators stepped in, New York setting dioxane caps, for instance, the industry did what it always could do. It reformulated in months and shipped compliant product. Margins dipped, then recovered. The proof was in the speed. When the rule is clear and the deadline real, the change is achievable. The last piece is marketing. Scent memory ads didn't just sell detergent, they sold a culture. Clean equals a smell, safety equals kills 99.9%. Fresh equals a constant bloom from a vent. That conditioning kept demand for the very chemistries the risk memos questioned. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was a system that made the profitable choice feel like the natural one. Maya never read an internal memo. She didn't need to. She felt the externalities in a wheeze, a headache, a rash, and a grocery bill. The profits were real, so were the costs. The gap between them is where policy, disclosure, and consumer pressure either narrow the distance or leave households to keep paying in private. The human toll, micro-stories, and medical reality. The first clue in Maya's building wasn't a lab report. It was apparent at 2 a.m. with a spacer in one hand and a laundry basket in the other. She de-switched to a fresh rain detergent because the daycare said the blanket smelled musty. Her toddler's chest got tight every Sunday night after sheets day. A pediatrician suggested fragrance-free and an extra rinse as a trial. 1 week later, no late-night neb. 2 weeks, still quiet. The detergent didn't cause asthma. It helped stack the deck. Removing, it took a weight off the barrel. Across town, a nurse who washed dishes by hand every evening wore nitrile gloves at work but never at home. The backs of her hands cracked and burned all winter. She blamed sanitizer. An allergist asked for her home routine and circled sensitive dish soap with methylisothiazolinon. Patch testing lit up for isothiazolinons. When she swapped to an MI-free liquid and used gloves for sink duty, the fissures healed. She didn't ditch cleanliness. She changed which chemistry touched her skin for an hour a day. A different case came through a vet's door, a senior cat with raw patches on her belly. The family had just fallen in love with a new softener, calming lavender. The cat slept on the warm towels every laundry day. The vet's advice was simple: wash the linens with a true fragrance-free detergent, no softener, and rinse twice. 2 weeks later, the fur started to return. No injections, no expensive diets, just less residue against a bare belly. In a rent-stabilized building, a tenant kept a headache diary. Spikes lined up with the super's plug-in refill schedule. She asked for a change. They swapped to unscented. The headache softened but persisted. Her allergist explained that unscented often has masking fragrance. The building agreed to remove devices on her floor as a trial. The diary flattened. Not a miracle, just removing a constant VOC source from a narrow hallway where air didn't move. Inside a busy allergy clinic, the micro-stories pile up. A teenager with eczema whose neck clears when the family switches to a powdered detergent without MI and drops dryer sheets. A preschool teacher whose migraines ease after a no-fragrance classroom policy, and a letter to parents explaining that this wasn't about preferences. It was about keeping a room full of small lungs calm. A home health aide with a cough that flares on bathroom days. The fix is a microfiber scrub, a non-aerosol cleaner, and saving bleach for targeted disinfection, with the window open and the client in another room. Doctors don't call these cures, they call them exposure reductions. The science draws lines where it can. Isothiazolinones are well-documented sensitizers. Certain quats and bleach mists irritate airways. Terpenes react indoors to form secondary pollutants. 14-dioxane rides along as a contaminant in some ethoxylated systems and is tough to strip from water. Other lines are dotted. Fragrance sensitivity varies. Not everyone with asthma reacts to laundry. Some families can tolerate a lightly scented product with no immediate symptoms. Clinicians keep their advice practical. Remove common triggers first, then test reintroductions. It's the elimination diet for the air you live in. One micro-story begins at breakfast. The CEO we met earlier drops his coffee when the recall call comes. Here, it's a dad who drops a mug when his daughter coughs once and then again. Sharp little barks after he sprays the stove with a citrus degreaser. He checks the label and sees limonene. He hadn't thought that smelling like lemon could be part of the problem. He switches to warm water, a drop of mild soap, and a cloth for daily cleanups. The barking cough disappears from morning. Another starts at 5 a.m. A runner laces up and ties her hair back with a fresh towel off the drying rack. 10 minutes into her route, her scalp tingles, then burns. The dermatologist later tells her she's sensitized to a fragrance allergen, likely limonene or linalool oxidation products. She washes her workout gear with a fragrance-free powder and rinses twice. The stinging doesn't return. What nobody sees on a label is the second-hand effect. Scented laundry venting into shared courtyards, hallways with diffusers, rideshares that carry new car sprays, people who don't buy the products still breathe them. A grandma visiting her grandkids sits on a couch misted 2 hours earlier and rubs her eyes. A dog walker moves through a cloud outside the dryer vent and sneezes for a block. These aren't emergencies. They're the low hum of everyday exposures that push some bodies to react. Allergists talk about the barrel for a reason. Pollen, dust, a neighbor's plug-in, your own dryer sheet, the disinfectant your office switched to, each pours a little in. On most days, you're fine. Then the weather traps air. Someone mixes bleach with an acid cleaner in a small bathroom, and the barrel sloshes over. The fix isn't to fear every bottle. It's to lower the background so the spikes don't topple you. Maya's family didn't become chemical purists. They became choosy. The wheeze that used to punctuate Sundays faded into a quiet night. The cat stretched on sun-warmed blankets without scratching. The nurse's hands stopped cracking. The tenant's hallway smelled like nothing. In the clinic, the advice stayed steady. Simpler formulas, fewer volatile sources, targeted disinfection, and labels that name what matters. When the home gets quieter, the body often does too. What to do that actually works? Pattern break, no product haul needed. Panic wastes energy. A plan saves lungs and money. Start with a simple rule: reduce sources, don't mask them. That means fewer volatile products, shorter ingredient lists, and methods that rely on removal, not perfume. Viral framing, 3 swaps 1 weekend and your air gets quieter. Work the house in order of exposure. Laundry first. Switch to a true fragrance-free detergent, one that lists no fragrance, parfum, or perfume anywhere. Favor non-ethoxylated surfactant systems when possible. Soap blends, alkyl polyglucosides, or methyl ester sulfonates. If the brand uses ethoxylated surfactants, look for public 1,4-dioxane testing or credible certifications that cap process contaminants. Start at the lowest effective dose and add water discipline. Don't overpack the drum, use the extra rinse if fabrics hold scent, and maintain the machine with periodic hot cycles. If laundry still smells hours later, reduce dose again, you left chemistry behind. Next, cut the fragrance pipeline. Pull plugins, skip fabric sprays, and retire dryer sheets and softeners for a month. Replace with wool dryer balls, lower heat, and shorter cycles to tame static. If towels feel scratchy, adjust detergent dose and try a rinse-only cycle once to strip legacy residues. Add a half cup of white vinegar to the rinse for towels if your machine allows it and you're not washing stone-dusted items. Store warm laundry outside bedrooms to avoid off-gassing where you sleep. Move to the bathroom and kitchen with method, not muscle. Daily cleaning rarely requires disinfectants. Use a mild, non-aerosol cleaner, soap-based or a simple surfactant blend, and a microfiber cloth. Reserve bleach or EPA-registered disinfectants for targeted jobs, raw meat spills, illness, or mold patches after removal of growth. When you disinfect, create space and time. One product per session, never mix with acids or ammonia, open a window, run the fan, clear kids and pets, and let surfaces dry fully. Gloves matter. Thin nitrile keeps hands out of the chemistry without slowing you down. Preservatives are small words with big consequences. Scan labels for methylisothiazolinon, methylchloroisothiazolinon, and benzisothiazolinon. For routine use sprays and dish liquids, pick formulas without them. If your options are limited, choose concentrates you dilute fresh, which need less preservation, or dry formats like powders and bars. For glass, use a vinegar-water mix on non-stone surfaces. For greasy stoves, apply paste cleaners, baking soda plus a little dish soap, and let time do the heavy lifting before you scrub. Ventilation is the multiplier. Before you spray or scrub, open a window or door even for 5 minutes. Run exhaust fans during cleaning and 20 minutes after. If they're weak, crack a window to create a cross breeze. In apartments with sealed windows, clean when hallway doors can stay open briefly. Stand aside when opening the dishwasher at cycle end. Let the plume fall before unloading. In laundries, wait a beat before leaning into the drum. Transparency is your shortcut. Favor brands that publish full ingredient lists, disclose fragrance components or offer verified fragrance-free lines, and state 1,4-dioxane controls. Ecolabels can help. Look for programs that set limits on allergens, preservatives, and process contaminants, not just packaging claims. If a product sold in Europe lists fragrance allergens online and the US version doesn't, ask the company for the same disclosure here. Build a home list. 3 daily tools cover most jobs: a mild dish soap, a dilute all-purpose cleaner without isothiazolinones or undisclosed fragrance, and microfiber. Keep 2 targeted helpers for rare tasks: a transparent, safer degreaser you use with windows open, and a small bottle of bleach for periodic disinfection, stored separately, labeled clearly, and never used with anything else. Add gloves and a couple of high-quality cloths you launder fragrance-free. Teach the house the new normal. If you can smell it, you used too much. If it promises weeks of freshness, it'll live on your skin. If it foams like a latte, the bubbles are for you, not the mess. Put a piece of tape on the detergent cap marking your dose. Set a reminder on your phone to run the bathroom fan after cleaning. Tell guests no plug-ins, please. Make it about health, not preference. Maya did all of this in 2 weekends. The house didn't smell like a commercial anymore. It smelled like nothing. Quiet air, clean surfaces, and laundry that didn't talk back. That's the point. Clean is a result, not a scent. Why you're still falling for it today? Hook, if you know the ingredients, why does the scented bottle still win? Maya could see the labels now, but the aisle still pulled at her. That wasn't weakness, it was design. Scent memory marketing starts young. A grandmother's linen closet, a partner's hoodie, the first apartment that didn't smell like the last tenant. Those moments pair clean with a smell. Years later, one whiff of cotton flips a switch. You're not thinking chemistry, you're chasing a feeling. Companies know that loop. They test base notes until they hit the blend that says safe, warm, done. The bottle promises what your brain wants: certainty. Kills 99.9%. Odor eliminated. Lasts for weeks. Under stress, we reach for guarantees. After outbreaks and headlines, the idea of wiping away invisible threats with a single spray is hard to resist. The label gives you permission to stop worrying for now. Convenience sweetens the deal. Pods, sprays, wipes, they compress work into seconds. A dryer sheet spares you the tiny shock in a dark hallway. A plug-in saves an awkward conversation about the litter box. A rinse aid makes you feel like a better host when glasses gleam. The payoff is immediate, and the cost hides in the background, spread over days and rooms. There's social signaling too. Houses don't just get cleaned, they perform. If guests walk in and say, "It smells amazing in here," it feels like you've done something right. If laundry smells like mountain air, you've been a good parent, partner, roommate. Scent is an easy proxy for care. That pressure sells product and sustains the myth that clean should announce itself. The language is tuned to disarm you. plant-based, dermatologist-tested, hypoallergenic. None of those phrases guarantees what your skin or lungs need, but they read like a safety net. Unscented sounds like absence even when it's masking fragrance. Fragrance-free looks identical on the shelf whether it's verified or a marketing decision. Unless you've been burned, literally, by a rash, you rarely read past the front. Friction keeps you in the loop. True fixes, ventilation, lower doses, gloves, cloths, slower methods, ask for tiny behavior changes that don't photograph well. A microfiber cloth does sparkle. A room that smells like nothing doesn't feel like a win until a migraine doesn't show up or a kid sleeps through the night. Marketing bridges that gap with theater. Foam you can see, colors you can trust, scents you can remember. Industry narratives fill the quiet spaces. Wellness trends recast fragrance as therapy. Lavender to sleep, citrus to focus, eucalyptus to open the airways. Some blends are pleasant, some moments feel better. But selling scent as health reframes exposures as benefits and blurs the line between a diffuser in a yoga class and a plug-in in a nursery. The story shifts from less is safer to more is self-care. Then there's the default bias. You buy what your parents bought, what your friends use, what's on the end cap. If a brand has been in your house for a decade without a dramatic event, inertia wins. When a rash or cough does show up, you echo common scripts. It's just winter skin. Allergies are bad this year. The building's old. By the time you connect the dots, you've forgotten which bottle came home when. Finally, the comparisons are rigged. If you try a lower scent detergent at the same dose as your old one, fabrics may feel different for a week while residues wash out. Static spikes when you stop sheets for the first loads. A vinegar rinse smells like vinegar for 10 minutes. It's easy to call the experiment a failure and run back to what feels familiar. Companies count on that rebound. Maya got past it by changing what counted as proof. She didn't wait for compliments about how the house smelled. She watched for fewer headaches and calmer nights. She treated silence as data, a bathroom that didn't bite back, a dryer that didn't fog the hallway, a dishwasher door that opened without a plume. When she wanted a sensory reward, she moved it to the moment that didn't load her air. A candle outdoors after dinner, a bouquet on the balcony, a lemon on the cutting board while she cooked. You're not falling for a trick because you're naive. You're responding to cues that were trained and reinforced by ads, stores, and habits over years. The way out isn't moral purity. It's noticing the cue, pausing before the reflex, and deciding whether the payoff is worth the background hum your body has to carry. When clean stops needing a smell, the spell breaks. What's left is a house that works for the people in it, not just the cameras pointed at it. Resolution and meaning. The smell of clean was never safety. It was a story that taught us to breathe what we didn't need. Resolution, clean that doesn't perform, air that's quiet, and products that name their parts. If you want the full ingredient list cheat sheet and the simplest swaps for each room, watch the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss our follow-up on hidden toxins in personal care, and share this with the friend who thinks fresh scent equals clean air.